everyone, and welcome back. So today we are looking at sentence fragments, part 4, sentence fragments in real life. We looked at sentence fragments first, what they were and how to fix them. Then we talked about another type of sentence fragment, the dependent clause. Then we examined sentences in pairs and short paragraphs, and now we're looking at authentic materials. So let's review. What is a fragment? A fragment is a piece of a sentence, also known as an incomplete sentence. Unlike a complete sentence, a fragment is missing something. So as this book cover shows, an exploding flower, little pieces of it going everywhere. It could be missing a subject, or it could be missing a verb, or it could be missing both. And sometimes there are also dependent clauses. They're not necessarily missing something except for the complete thought. That's not totally there. So it's a group of words that starts with a conjunction but leaves us with unanswered questions. So here are our examples. Missing a subject. Practice the piano all day. We have our verb practiced but no subject. Who is practicing? Missing a verb. Tom, Terry, Toby, and Tyler. Those are our subjects. I'm just going to put a big S over all of them. But they're not doing anything. Missing both. On the website. Doesn't have a subject or a verb. Or a dependent clause. Although I watch Netflix all day... ... What happened? So, a fragment in context. We also looked at some of these. While Sarah stayed home with her children, Dean worked 2 jobs to help support the family. So this part right here is another dependent clause fragment. And it starts with this word while, which is our conjunction. So let's fix these. Sometimes we add a subject. We practice the piano all day. Sometimes we add a verb. Tom, Terry, Toby, and Tyler go to the movies every weekend. Sometimes we add both. The information on the website was unclear. Sometimes with a dependent clause, we need to add an independent clause before or after. So although I watched Netflix all day, comma, I wasn't entertained. You could also flip that sentence to say I wasn't entertained although I watched Netflix all day. Fragment in context. Here we're going to combine the sentences. So now we have the dependent clause, just like the example above, and then a comma, and then our independent clause, our full simple sentence. While Sarah stayed home with her children, comma, Dean worked 2 jobs to help support the family. So that's how things would look kind of on their own if you were taking a test, or if your teacher said this sentence in paragraph 3, it's the first sentence and it's a fragment and you need to add a subject, right? That's what that would kind of look like. Sometimes though, these things look different in real life. So for example, we often talk in fragments, and this is a little sample of dialogue from someone else. So Joe, yo, what's up? Dan, not much. You? Joe, just chillin'. Dan, yup. COD later? Joe, can't. Grounded. Dan, stinks to be you. Joe, I guess. You? Dan, if I get the lawn mowed, then yeah. So it's pretty much almost just fragments. So in speech, a lot of times, if you hear fragments like this in real life, especially I think this is confusing if English is like your second or third or fourth or whatever. If English is not your primary language that you grew up speaking, it can be confusing when people talk in fragments because there's a lot of information left out. But here we can kind of see there's a lot of questions. Those questions are answered. And when we talk, it does sort of make sense. And if this were, in person, body language can fill in the gaps, and so can the other person's words. does this sound too formal? So let's revise their dialogue to make it be proper, but it might not really sound realistic. So Joe, hello Dan, what is going on today? Dan, nothing much is going on. What is going on with you? I am just chilling. Yes. Would you like to play Call of Duty later? I can't because I am grounded. It stinks to be you. I guess it does. Are you going to play later? I guess I will if I get the lawn mowed first. So all of the sentences are correct, but they don't sound real. These are two teenage guys talking about video games. They're not going to be formal. And remember, too, in speech, we don't always need to speak in full, properly formed sentences. But in our papers, that's a different matter. And same thing goes for business documents. We're going to look at that problem in a business document later on in this presentation. So here is a real, I didn't pick anything gory from this book, so don't worry too much. Stephen King, I have noticed, uses sentence fragments very often, and we're going to look at two examples from his work. This is from It. I'm going to skip down just for the sake of time. A small boy in a yellow slicker and red galoshes ran cheerfully along beside the newspaper boat. The rain had not stopped, but it was finally slackening. It tapped on the yellow hood of the boy's slicker, sounding to his ears like rain on a shed roof. A comfortable, almost cozy sound. The boy in the yellow slicker was George Denborough. He was 6. So we have this sentence fragment, a comfortable, almost cozy sound. I've highlighted it here for you in the yellow. Why do you think he uses that sentence fragment? This is someone who is a professional writer, a very well-known author, and he taught writing as well. So it's not like his novels have just become popular, but he doesn't know how to write. He's making that choice on purpose. And it almost sets us up for thinking that this is a comfortable, cozy moment, when in fact it's not. Right? This boy is, as we see in the poster for the movie version, the boy is in danger. So he's drawing attention to those words by having it be a sentence fragment. And if we were to add, it would be something like, it was, or the rain was, a comfortable, almost cozy sound. So we'd have to kind of add those words in there if we wanted it to be, I'm going to put in, it looks like I'm writing just like it. It was a comfortable, cozy sound. We'd do that. We'd make the A a small a. So you could break the rule like this if you were comfortable enough in the rules, but for most of your academic work, if you're writing papers for a school or if you have a business document, you're not going to want to do that. But if you do creative writing, you can think about how to use a fragment. Or if you're doing creative writing and you're writing a novel and you're doing dialogue, you might want to have a fragment there so it sounds more realistic. So let's look at another example. This one is from Salem's Lot. Again, I'm going to skip that first part. This is a person driving down the road. He switched to the travel lane, slowed to the minimum turnpike speed, and began to look for anything that would jog his memory. There was nothing at first, and he tried to caution himself against almost sure disappointment. You were 9 then. That's 25 years of water under the bridge. Places change like people. In those days, the 4-lane 295 hadn't existed. If you wanted to go to Portland from the lot, you went out Route 12 to Falmouth and then got on the number 1. Time had marched on. So I highlighted in blue short sentences, and in the yellow is our fragment. The two short sentences are not wrong, but people sometimes would identify those as being fragments because they're short. But here we have places, it's a subject, and change is what the places are doing. They're doing the action of changing. Time is our subject, and had marched is our verb. So those have both a subject and verb. They're just very short sentences. And here we have like people, again, drawing attention to this idea. So maybe the person who is driving has changed. Maybe someone else that he knows has changed. And he's thinking about how this place has changed just like people change. And Stephen King is using that fragment to draw our attention to that idea, possibly foreshadowing something that's going to go on later, how this place changes or how people change or both. So that I think is kind of interesting. Would this movie quote be as effective if it were a complete sentence? Why so serious? So why it's wrong, it's lacking a verb, and actually it's lacking a subject as well. Why are you so serious? Then we would have our verb, and then we would have our subject. But if the Joker in The Dark Knight leaned over and said, why are you so serious? It would not really have the punch of the original. And it's a phrase that's been used quite a bit, but it's so effective in this movie. And part of the reason, too, is because this guy is nuts. And so does a crazy person in a movie have to speak incorrect, grammatically correct sentences? No. No, he does not. But that's how we would fix it if we were going to. So, I love this quote from Picasso: learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. And that is basically what's going on here. Picasso learned how to paint. He was in a school for painting. He learned all of the traditional ways of painting, and then he decided to break some of the rules and make his own. So if you get to that level where you're doing creative writing, where you're using those sentences, when we looked at sentence variety, right? Like music, there's a long sentence and then a short sentence and then a medium sentence and then another long to mix it up and play with the reader's ear. A fragment in an academic essay. Oh, I forgot to put this in here. Yeah, so this was an old paper of mine. I was looking for examples from student work, and then I thought, did I ever make this mistake? Yes, I did. So let's take a look at it, and then you'll know that I'm not perfect. I'm not going to read the whole thing again for the sake of time, but basically, I'm talking about this book, The Iron Dream, and how it connects to the Cold War. So I'll start right here. During that time, many science fiction narratives demonized Russians and praised intense anti-communist efforts. By the early 1970s, many Americans had a more cynical view of the Cold War. Although The Iron Dream, written by Norman Spinrad in 1972, echoes this cynicism, by using satirical language and cliched science fiction themes to parody stories such as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Spinrad looks back on an American past that included the real threat of communism, etc. Okay, so this sentence, although, if you notice, I have a tendency to write a lot of very long sentences when I was younger, and since then I've learned better sentence variety. But this sentence starting although is a dependent clause fragment. It doesn't look like a fragment because it is longer. And very likely what happened is that I ran this through a grammar check or a spell check and grammar check on Word or whatever program I was using at the time, and it didn't pick it up because it was longer, and it does have a subject, The Iron Dream, the book, and then written, which is the verb, and echoes. Sorry, echoes is the main verb there. So The Iron Dream echoes this cynicism. But because I have the word although in there, it's a dependent clause. Now, you can tell that I have a very long sentence here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll call it a quarter, 4.5 lines, 4.25 lines. And above it, I have not a short sentence really, again, about 1.5 lines. So adding this dependent clause phrase to the sentence before or after it isn't really going to work. And I'm hoping you can maybe guess how we could fix this. We can just take out that dependent clause word. By the early 70s, many Americans had a more cynical view of the war. The Iron Dream, written by Norman Spinrad in 1972, echoes this cynicism. I like this edit the best because now we have a shorter sentence before this long this long treatise that I have written underneath it. Fix number 2, we could, if we wanted, add the fragment to the previous sentence. So, by the early 1970s, many Americans had a more cynical view of the Cold War, and the Iron Dream echoes this cynicism. So, this does help to connect the ideas a little bit better by combining these two sentences, getting rid of that although and combining them with and. But again, I think because a lot of the other sentences are longer, I probably wouldn't fix it this way, but I could and have it be grammatically correct. It would fatigue the reader out, but it would be grammatically correct. So let's look at a fragment in a cover letter. I have to say, this out of anything is the most important. If you have a fragment in a cover letter or another grammatical error in a cover letter, you're not going to get the job. One time in one of the first jobs I applied for, I misspelled the person's name to whom I was writing. And no, I did not get that job. So let's take a look. Okay. So, dear hiring manager, this is real. I changed the stuff at the beginning and the person's name. So I changed this stuff, obviously, and the name. But anyway, dear hiring manager, my name is Neil Alcove, and I am a marketing specialist with over 20 years of experience in my field. For the last 6 years, I have worked at Independent Credit Union, Marketing Executive 2, Marketing Executive 3, Assistant Managing Director of Marketing. My versatile skills could be an asset to your company. Key accomplishments include. So then we have overseeing social media and establishing. Okay, this part right here is actually okay because it follows from, and I should have put it in a different color, but it follows from this idea of key accomplishments. It is that sentence is missing something. It's technically correct, but we're going to add to it to be a little bit better. But here with the bullet points, if you have bullet points like this in a cover letter, it's actually okay because it's part of the sentence before it. But you do have to make sure, and this guy did, so that's good, that he worded them the same way. So it doesn't have like overseeing and then established. But at any rate, the real problem is this monstrosity right here where we have subjects but no verbs. So a list of different titles that this person has had, but there's no connection. So let's fix it for him. I cut the top part off. So my name is Neil Alcove, and I am a marketing specialist with over 20 years of experience in my field. For the last 6 years, I have worked at Independent Credit Union. While there, I was promoted 3 times and held the positions of Marketing Executive 2, Marketing Executive 3, Assistant Managing Director of Marketing. My versatile skills could be an asset to your company. Some of my key accomplishments include... yeah, so this is quite a bit better. We would need an and in here. So we didn't fix that for him, but I'm putting it in now. And you can see I didn't just add one word here because it didn't need only one word. It really needed the full thought. While there, I was promoted 3 times and held the positions of, and then the list. So let's review. Fragments. A fragment is another term for an incomplete sentence. In some types of writing, an author might know the rules and they might use a fragment to draw attention to certain words or to make a point. When we speak, we also don't use complete sentences all the time, and we often see fragments in dialogue in real life, in movies, and in books because people are talking back and forth. They're filling in the gaps, and a lot of writers want to make dialogue seem more realistic. If they have the full complete sentences, as we saw with Joe and Dan, it doesn't sound authentic. However, in more formal situations, such as college papers or business documents, we need to correct grammar errors like fragments. If you don't fix these mistakes, your writing may be informal, unprofessional, or unclear. So a lot of times people will say to me, I write the way that I talk, and they mean that they're writing a lot of fragments. That's a good indication. If you think that you write the way that you talk, it's probably because you have some incomplete sentences in there. And you want your writing in business and in college to be formal, professional, and clear. So it's important to fix those mistakes. You'll be practicing on your own next, and then later on, we're going to talk about run-on sentences and kind of do the same pattern. Run-on sentences on their own, in pairs and in short paragraphs in little groups, and then looking at authentic materials, so real life examples of this error. And maybe I'll throw in another paper of mine, because I know for a fact when I was younger, before I learned how to have better grammar, I definitely had a lot of run-on sentences. So look forward to that later. And if you have questions, you can ask me in the comments. Thanks, everybody.